Hi there, VC. My name is Carsten. I'm from Denmark, and this is my third video here on my channel. Welcome. I've been lurking around in the VC for like 4 or 5 years now, and gotten inspiration for a lot of new genres, a lot of new bands, a lot of new albums that I wouldn't have known otherwise. So I have gotten a lot of inspiration, and I thought that now is maybe the time to do a little back to the VC and start making videos. So I hope that I will more frequently produce some videos to put here on my channel, and I hope you will enjoy them. So, where to start with the video and what to show first. I've been thinking a bit about it, and I came up with the idea to show 5 different albums that have had a major influence or a huge impact on my music taste. And to vary it a bit, I've decided to pick an album from each decade, from the 60s up till the noughts. So there's 5 different albums from 5 different decades. Let's start out with the first album. You all know this, Revolver by the Beatles. When I was a child and when I was young, my father used to play a lot of Beatles. He still does. And when he played Beatles back home, well, then obviously I was listening to the Beatles as well. So I learned Beatles from an early age, and grew to like him, grew to love him. And this album is maybe my favorite Beatles album. It's a favorite because you can start listening or start hearing some of the more oriental influences that are on this album, and it gets a bit more psychedelic than it was on Revolver. There's still some of the more regular pop Beatles songs here, like Taxman or Eleanor Rigby, She Said, She Said. But the main reason for my love of this album is the last track on side B, Tomorrow Never Knows. To me, Tomorrow Never Knows is the best Beatles track ever. It's so visionary and so ahead of its time. It sounds like it could have been produced in the 90s. Especially the drum loops is amazing on this track. So yeah, Revolver, my favorite Beatles album, and an album that have shaped my taste in music. Let's move on to the 70s. I could have chosen a lot of other albums. If I had to make this list in half a year, it might turn out a bit different than it has today. But the second album is Dirty Deeds Done Dirt Cheap by AC/DC. I'm from 77, just around when this album came out, but I learned I learned about AC/DC in 1990 when The Razor's Edge came out. And I listened a lot to The Razor's Edge, and after that Live at Donington came, and I listened a lot to Live at Donington, especially together with my friends at that time. We've been partying a lot to AC/DC, especially in the 90s. This album is not picked by a lot to be their favorite AC/DC album, but to me this is very special. There's a lot of humor on this album, and I like that. There was a lot of humor in the Bon Scott era. I also like the Brian Johnson era, but the Bon Scott era is a bit more special to me. Of course, Dirty Deeds Done Dirt Cheap was the big hit on this record, and maybe the only big hit, Ain't No Fun Waiting Around to Be a Millionaire. Could be another. I think it was only an Australian hit. But there's also a lot of other good tracks. Squealer, Big Balls, Rocker, Problem Child. It's filled with solid rock songs. This is just an amazing album. So Dirty Deeds, AC/DC, that was the 70s. Then we're going up to the 80s, and this album is where it all began to me. The Beatles was my father's music. I didn't discover it myself. This album I'm going to show you now was the first album that I fell in love with and discovered by myself at an early age. I was 8 years, and I can't recall if it was late 85 or early 86 I heard this song by the band for the first time, or I saw this song being performed for the first time on television. It wasn't this video that everybody knows now, but it was a live performance, as it was in the 80s, you know, a lot of playback. But it was a song by a Norwegian group called Aha, and the song was Take On Me. Everybody knows the song, everybody knows the video, and the song has been immortalized, and it doesn't really belong to Aha anymore. It belongs to everybody, and everybody knows this song and has a relationship to this song. But it wasn't really only this song that made me fall in love with this band or getting interested in music. It was the whole album, and a lot of you might think of Aha as a one-hit wonder band. To me, they are not, and you can laugh if you want to. That's perfectly fine with me. But the whole album is very, very good. They had another big hit, "The Sun Always Shines on TV," that opens the B-side. But Hunting High and Low was also a single from this album. Train of Thought was also a big song from this album. So Hunting High and Low. I didn't get the album physically back in 85 or 86, but one of my friends got the cassette, and I borrowed the cassette, and then I transferred it to my own cassette, and I have it here. This is my cassette from 85 or 86, and it has, maybe you can see the titles here. It has Hunting High and Low on the one side, and on the other side the follow-up, which was Scoundrel Days. And this must be the cassette that I have listened to the most during my lifetime. It's beat and it's torn, but it still functions. And sometimes I still play the cassette. So that was Aha, that was the 80s. Moving up to the 90s. Again, I could have picked a lot of different albums. I listened a lot to grunge in the 90s, which probably did as well. I could have picked Nirvana, I could have picked Alice in Chains, Soundgarden, Pearl Jam. I could have picked a lot of different albums, but the one I chose was this one. The Smashing Pumpkins Siamese Dream 1993. To me, Smashing Pumpkins is the essence of music in the 90s. They made 4, 5, if you count Machina from 2000, they made 5 great albums in the 90s. And this is maybe the best album. At least this was the album I listened to first from Smashing Pumpkins. Everybody knows the single Disarm, which is a very, very strong single. But there's also a lot of other great tracks here. Maybe Mayonnaise is my favorite on this album. Siamese Dream, Smashing Pumpkins. And the last album I want to show from the Knots now is this one. Black Rebel Motorcycle Club. Self-titled debut. This is, in my opinion, one of the best debuts ever It's way up there, along with Appetite for Destruction, the Zeppelin's first album, or Sabbath's first album. This is an amazing debut. A three-piece band. Peter Hayes is one of the members. Peter Hayes used to play in Brian Jonestown Massacre, which I think he left Brian Jonestown Massacre in the late 90s, and then he formed Black Rebel Motorcycle Club. And this album is really, really good. It's guitar-driven, fuzzy guitar, garage, dark rock. It's really, really good, and they are amazingly live, and they are amazing on album. If you don't know this album, I think some of you, or a lot of you do, you need to check this out. It's also very, very good. This is a reissue with some bonus tracks, but especially the first side is totally cool, really strong. Love Burns, Red Eyes and Tears, Whatever Happened to My Rock and Roll, Awake. It's a really, really solid rock album. Black Rebel Motorcycle Club. So that was 5 albums that have formed my opinion and my interest in music, and I would like to hear from you. You can write in the comments which albums or which bands have made a huge impact on you. What have formed your taste in music? I would really like to hear that. Also, I want to give out a big shout out to Jakob over at New Sounds and Old. He has been pressuring me a bit to do these videos, and finally I got the courage and got the time to do it. So a big shout out to you, Jakob. You know what I'm talking about. And then I hope to see you next time. Stay safe and listen to some good music out there.